Most of the video game to movie adaptations are trash, but have you ever stopped to ask yourself why? We're going to see what really makes a movie based on a video game work. Video games movies have been around for a long time, and for a long time there was something called the video game curse. This curse was that every single video game to movie adaptation that came out was horrible. From this diabolical thing here being Bowser to the Master Chief, the Master Chief showing his face in the second episode of the series and doing the horizontal tango with a warp prison. And that's just two examples of quite a few video game to movie adaptations that have been disappointed. It just seems like the whole point of making a video game movie is to see how much they can steamroll and destroy all the fundamentals that our favorite video games have. But if the only thing that comes out of all of this is negative things, why do we want our favorite video games to be adapted into movies? What's the goal? I think one of the main reasons why we as video games fans want these adaptations to be made is because we want to share the video game that we love with the world. There are audiences for everything, right? Movies, video games, marble runs, bot races, so it's reasonable that not everyone likes to play your favorite game. And you are very aware that they are missing out on an excellent story. I really don't know how many people I've recommended The Last of Us story to, and before the series, it was hard to share my love for this story to other people who didn't play video games. Now, since The Last of Us series came out and it was a perfect adaptation, I can happily recommend this series to everyone else. And if you're with me and we have free time, be careful because I'll sit you down and put you on this whole series. I mean, we'll binge watch that shit in an afternoon. This is definitely a much easier way to share with other people my love for this story of this video game, as well as why I love it so much, compared to League of Legends, which is a game that I hate and for some reason I play, which I wasn't proud to recommend until the series came out. And then it turns out that the series is one of the best pieces of animation to come out in recent years. Here the opposite thing happens, because I definitely recommend people to watch the League of Legends series Arcane, but when they tell me, hey, what about the game? Is it worth playing? The series was really good. I'm speaking from the bottom of my heart. Don't play it. It's for your own good. And that's what having an adaptation of your favorite video game is all about. It's about being able to share your experience playing your favorite video game, being able to share with other people why you like it so much, and who knows, maybe they will even play the video game and now you can talk about different points of view with them. Which also leads me to say that one of the biggest advantages of adapting a video game to a movie is that you can introduce new audiences to the world of video game. Believe it or not, there are a lot of people who still think that video games are childish or a waste of time, which some are, like some simulators, like these ones where you work as a cashier in a store. I mean, you know you can do that in real life, right? And also, be careful with what I'm about to tell you. I know this seems impossible, but you get paid. Lovers of these simulator games, please don't hate me, it's all just a joke, thanks. Many people still think that video games are only for kids, when in reality, video games are much more than that. Video games have become an art, a form of expression, a way to convey stories and put you in a world you may never be able to live in. Whether it's feeling the experience of what it's like to be Peter Parker and having to deal with the normal person problems and the burden of saving a city, living in a post-apocalyptic world full of zombies where you have to make one of the most difficult decisions of your life that becomes a perfect piece of literature, or living in the Old West as a cowboy going through one of the deepest and most heartfelt stories. Video games are a way to tell stories, to put you in a completely different world than the one you're used to and feel part of something much bigger than you. Video games are art, and that is something that many people don't understand, and thanks to a good adaptation, simpler and shorter like a movie, they can understand. And besides being able to share with others your favorite video games, there are also benefits that you as a fan can have by watching a new version of your favorite game. For example, seeing new perspectives and different stories that maybe in the video game you didn't have time to go through. Both a video game and a movie have different ways of expressing themselves, which means that maybe a video game might have missed a pretty interesting story or not followed it up enough. So this is where a movie could come in hand on that and tell the story with more depth. And the same thing you can apply to a video game with a movie. A perfect example for this is The Last of Us series. See, in The Last of Us series, we have an entire episode that deals with the relationship of a couple living in the post-apocalyptic world of The Last of Us. This episode is not about zombies, guns, or danger. None of that. This is an episode that perfectly narrates a very sentimental love story between this couple that can easily make you cry. And this story is not explained at all in The Last of Us video game. The only thing that we have in the video game is a note that you find in the house of this couple that tells you this story in a different and quick way. So thanks to the fact that the series decided to take the time to explore more of this story and tell us a kind of Beauty in the Apocalypse, we had a perfect episode that gave us more content to us fans of the video games, and that besides, it is a super well carried story. And that's because video games, like movies, are different means of expression, so each one can contribute different things to the original story and tell us in a new way or expand the story that we already know. But sometimes the video game, it doesn't need an adaptation, you know? It doesn't need to go beyond just being a video game. For example, I don't know who was the misunderstood genius that said, you know what would be good? An Angry Birds movie. There is absolutely nothing to take away from that, except this joke.
Hi,
Hi.
I eat dirt.
There are so many good choices of video games that could be amazing movies, and they gave us the one about the birds bursting pigs because they steal their eggs. I recommend the birds to stick them on. I mean, it worked for me. They have never been stolen from me. So this being the example of a video game to a movie adaptation that just doesn't have to happen. What are the different video games to movie adaptations that exist? Which ones work, and why is it so difficult to get it right? From the different types of video game to movie adaptations that we've had, I think that I make a good list of the 3 categories that stand out and are the most common. And those are the video game with a cinematic story, the video game with an amazing lore that is not explored in the game, and the video game that is good but has no concrete plot overall. First, we need to talk about the video games that have cinematic stories. These kinds of video games are the ones that basically could be movies. These are the video games that are easier to adapt to a movie because their format is very similar. For example, The Last of Us, Red Dead Redemption, God of War. In all these games, you follow a specific story by chapter. Each chapter of the game is a new adventure that you will continue until the game is over. Apart from the fact that visually these games are very beautiful. You have beautiful landscapes, incredible photography, scenes in which you see the characters interact. These, if I'm being honest, are the best video games. For me, I really enjoy sitting down and participating in an incredible story for days. And I used to be a big fan of multiplayer games. Now I left them aside. Let's say they don't give me that much of a joy anymore. ¡Coño! The video game cinematic stories are pretty easy to adapt to a live action. In the Last of Us series, for example, there are literally scenes that are exactly the same as the video game. It was really hard to ruin this story in live action because they already had an exact formula to follow. The video game already feels like a playable movie, so for the series, they just had to add a couple of things to connect the story and fill in those gaps where you play as the character, which they managed to do perfectly in my opinion. The other type of adaptation you have is the video game with an amazing lore that is either wasted or not explored in the game. But I have to find a shorter title for that. There are certain video games that have a really good backstory. The world is gigantic, they have massive fights, different types of characters, wizards, archers, brawlers, everything spectacular you can imagine. And when it's time for the gameplay, bang! A card game. The best example I can find for this kind of video game adaptation is League of Legends. I mean, just watch one of the cinematics with which they promote the game. God, look at that knight, how he's running, bursting everybody. And that one, who's she? Those gloves are sick. Oh. And that one, oh my god, I'm in love already. Who's that bald bitch? What is that, a chain coming out of his stomach? Wait, did a statue just drop from the sky? Oh my god, these dudes look so cool together. Okay, I have to install this now. I can't wait to play it. And then you play the game and it's like,
actually lose to myself.
What?
I mean, League of Legends alone has over 100 playable characters, and all these characters have a story that connect to each other and to other characters. You have worlds, lands, different types of species. The lore of League of Legends is one of the most spectacular there is, and it has a lot of content to give us a worthy adaptation of this lore. So that's why Arcane worked out so well. Arcane is a series that tells us the stories of the characters we play in the video game. It goes much deeper into the story and gives us the opportunity to take advantage of the lore through incredible landscapes, well-developed characters, and different stories that little by little are connected to create a universe. So to adapt League of Legends to a series, they only had to use the lore of the video game, but also, of course, to make the fans of the video games happy, they added references to the video game as different types of iconic attacks of the characters, cartoon, and references to other characters. The Arcane series is the perfect example of how to adapt a video game whose story is not very well used in this one. And finally, we move on to the next type of adaptation. The adaptation of the video game that is very good, but it does not have a concrete plot in general, or has many types of plots. Some examples of these video games are Fallout, Mario, and Sonic. In the Mario Bros video games, you have a simple objective. Your wifey is stolen, you say Mamma Mia, you grab some courage and go to rescue her, going through different levels and facing all kinds of monsters, until you get to the turtle that spits fires that stole your wifey. Then you beat the turtle, rescue your wifey, and bravo, you've passed Mario. Congratulations. This is a great format that works for a video game. You have fun going through different levels, explore new worlds, and face different creatures. But for a long movie, this can be a bit boring. You have to add something more, put more feeling into the story, explore the characters better. These movies have to give you a reason to care about these characters besides the, hey, I play with him in a video game. So that's why in the Mario movie that came out recently, we can see a little bit of the story of the Mario Bros. In this movie, we see that Mario and Luigi are two brothers who are very close and have a great passion for plumbing, as well as we also see how their families may not be very supportive and doubtful of their decisions. Our characters have their own problems that they have to solve throughout the movie, and that's how they go from being simple plumbers with daddy issues to being the saviors of a kingdom full of mushrooms, which could be a metaphor that they are way past on drugs. But in the Mario movie, they go deeper into the story of Mario and Luigi and give us another perspective of the video games, as well as giving us references to the video game that we grew up with. Adapting these kinds of video games is not only about giving references to things that happened in these games, but to expand much more the perspective and the story that we have of our favorite characters. In Fallout is more or less the same. Having so many plots and different ways to play, we have different characters that adapt this type of gameplay and we follow multiple plots, but without losing the thread of the main one. For this types of games, you have to focus on exploring your main characters more and give them something that makes them more than just playable characters. And those are the three types of adaptations that I think are the most common. But the most important of each one of these adaptations is just one thing, something essential that distinguishes a movie from a video game and that is absolutely necessary for a video game adaptation to work. And that is transmitting the experience that playing a video game gives you. Video games give you a very different experience than watching a movie. Well, in a movie you have a strict story to follow. For example, you have your main character already established, he's going to make his decisions, you don't have any kind of influence over the actions that the character may have, unlike, for example, a video game. In a video game, you can decide your own way to pass each level. Yes, you may have a story that you have to follow and a path, but you're the one that decides how you cross that path. For example, maybe you're one of those who likes to be more stealthy in a video game, one of those gamers who likes to plan every little move and pass the missions without taking any damage. Or maybe you just don't care about all of that and you go all in like John Wick blowing everyone up, but all of that is up to the decision of the person playing the video game. It's up to you and the experience you want to have when playing in the game, and that is something that is very difficult to translate into a movie. For example, while I was researching to make this video, I saw a video from the channel Like Stories of Old, in which he talks about why Fallout is the perfect adaptation. In this video, he mentions that the most important thing when making a faithful adaptation is to transmit the experience that playing a video game gives you. For example, in Fallout, they convey the experience through the different characters in the series. You have the main character who is a complete noob in the outside world where everything is dangerous, and little by little we see her learning about the post-apocalyptic world she lives in. On the other side, you have the ghoul, who represents this try-hard part of the community who never misses a bullet and knows every single video game code and how it works. He knows what to do in every situation, and all of this thanks to the experience of him playing the last past games. Plus, in the series, you have these moments that seem to be like side missions that you can find in video games. Whether it's interacting with someone you've never seen in your life and they ask you to give them water, just a simple scene like this helps to represent and transmit this energy that playing the video game can give you. In this video, he also mentions the great example of The Last of Us, in which he says that The Last of Us is not just a game about fighting zombies, humans, and solving puzzles. The Last of Us is a video game that conveys a story of a connection between two people who have just met and happen to be perfect for each other. A father who lost his daughter and a daughter who lost everything. These two people meet and have to go all the way across the United States to reach a decision that will leave an impact in you and will mark you forever. So you have to know how to translate this energy that playing this video game gives you to a movie in order for it to work. You have to know how to give the audience the same feeling by capturing all the essence that you can have when you are playing the video game. And that's how you get a faithful adaptation of the video game. Of course, you can't convey 100% of the experience. Even though The Last of Us series is amazing, it will never be able to compare to the video game. And that is because they are different means of expression that each brings something different. Each medium has its own way of adapting a story, and each can give you different perspectives to help you understand the essence of the story. And that's the key point. I believe that to make a good video game to movie adaptation, you have to know how to capture the essence of the video game, add new things that can add more to the story, and make the most of the medium in which you are telling the story, whether it's a video game or a movie. And something very important you need to remember is you're not always going to be able to satisfy everyone. There's always going to be something that someone isn't going to like. So the next time you see a new video game adaptation coming out, or you ask yourself what video game would make a good movie, now you know exactly what to expect, and more importantly, what this adaptation has to have in order to be a faithful movie to your favorite video game. But hey, what do I know? That's just my opinion and you should just ignore it. Thank you for watching and see you in the next episode of Peak. First episode in English, let's go!